Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Hello.
So today we're diving into some really interesting sources shared by a listener. They're all about Julia Klaus.
Right, Julia Klaus, known as a community builder, especially for her work over at VMware. Quite a bit of material here.
Yeah, and it's a real mix article, some personal notes, reflections. And our mission today really is to look past, the standard resume points.
Exactly. Forget just the degrees or the job titles for a second. We want to unpack what really shaped her, particularly in that community manager role, how her whole life experience feeds into that.
Yeah, what made her tick, what made her effective, because these sources suggest it's way more than just professional training.
Definitely. It seems like her foundation was built on, well, a really diverse set of experiences, some quite challenging, actually. Things you wouldn't normally connect directly to a tech community job.
Things like growing up on a farm in Brazil, working in hospitals, navigating totally new countries. It's quite a journey.
And somehow, all that seems to have laid the groundwork for building these online communities. It's fascinating.
Okay, so let's dig in. Where do these sources say her story really kicks off?
Well, it starts pretty far from Silicon Valley, that's for sure. On a farm, South Brazil.
A farm, okay.
And the sources point out this interesting contrast in her childhood, like moments of being really independent, kind of wild, but also a very rigid upbringing alongside that.
That sounds complex from the get-go.
Yeah.
And there's mention, I think, that this environment, it actually contributed to her developing PTSD.
That's what the notes suggest, yeah. So dealing with some serious challenges early on, alongside building resilience, I suppose.
Then there's this big shift, right? Moving away for college to a big town.
Yeah.
How did that impact her?
Well, it wasn't just starting classes, it was adapting to a whole new world, really. A big cultural leap from farm life.
Another layer of adaptation then.
Exactly. And there's this little anecdote from high school that kind of stood out to me. She apparently felt odd.
Odd? How so?
Like she was into transgenics, biology, scientific stuff, while her friends were all about pop music.
Huh. Okay, that is specific.
But the interesting part is, even feeling odd, she still attracted people. People still gather around her.
So even back then, there was maybe this natural ability to connect. Over shared interests, even if they weren't mainstream.
Seems like it. Something authentic there. Then the sources mention she lived in Europe for about 6 months, too. Another experience broadening her horizons.
And then the big one, 2013, moving to the U.S.
Yeah, and this wasn't just relocating, it was arriving, basically not speaking English, having to learn the language, the culture, build a life from scratch.
Wow, that takes some serious courage.
Incredible adaptability needed there. And then the sources mention, really sadly, a personal tragedy hit in 2017, which left her on her own in the U.S.
Oh, wow. So facing immense personal challenges on top of the cultural adaptation.
Yeah. These aren't just like footnotes in her story, they're shaping experiences, building resilience, empathy, giving her a unique way of looking at connection, maybe.
It makes sense. Okay, so let's connect that to her early career. The sources suggest her first jobs weren't typical tech path jobs, but they were important. How so?
Well, there's definitely a thread of working with people, with communities, like an internship in administration at a big retail store, dealing with customers, team dynamics.
Okay.
Then she worked for a financial company, managed a team selling credit card machines door to door.
Door to door, that's direct interaction.
Very direct, face to face, dealing with all sorts of business owners, different personalities, constantly connecting.
And then there's this NGO work that the sources seem to really emphasize, the Eco Association for Environmental Conservation in Brazil.
Yeah, this sounds pivotal. She was managing projects to help fishermen who are using predatory fishing methods to re-educate them, basically.
So helping them shift to sustainable practices.
Right, providing resources, education, and this involved pitching projects to the government for funding, working directly with this community that was facing, big economic and environmental pressures.
It sounds like she was kind of a bridge figure. Didn't the sources mention something about international purchases for a boat? And connecting fishermen to restaurants.
Exactly. Managing the purchase of this boat, getting it set up for scallop production, and then, enabling these fishermen to sell their scallops and oysters directly to fancy restaurants in São Paulo.
That's quite a connection to make. Rural fishing village to high-end urban dining.
Think about the skills needed. Bringing in biologists, setting up classes for the villagers, handling logistics, sourcing supplies. It's project management, sure, but deeply focused on community uplift.
And the sources explicitly say This work with small communities awakened the passion for people that she always had inside.
That's the quote. It really nails it, doesn't it? That passion wasn't born in tech. It was ignited there, working hands-on with people.
Is there another example from that time that sort of reinforces this?
Yeah, her time as a sales rep at Berkeley End & Co. It's another great story showing her resourcefulness and focus on solving problems for people.
What was the situation there?
It was about materials for positioning patients in intensive care. Really expensive imports. Her company made these special foams, viscoelastic foams. She saw an opportunity.
Right, and this story about the surgical tables at the São Paulo University Hospital, that was quite specific.
Yeah, really specific. She saw these valuable tables just sitting there, unused. Why? Because the vendors stopped making these specific foam covers they needed for long surgeries, imported covers.
Ah.
She took measurements, went back to her company, worked with the production team, and they developed a domestic version, a replacement.
And the result was pretty significant.
Huge. They got over 56 surgical tables back into use in surgical centers within 6 months.
Wow. So good for her company's revenue, obviously, but also a massive help to the hospital, saving the money, getting equipment working again.
Exactly. And again, think about the interactions required, not just selling. Observing, problem-solving, collaborating internally, talking to all levels of hospital staff. And the sources mentioned she also saw the tough side of hospitals, the sad things, another layer of human experience.
So all these early jobs, retail, finance, the NGO, medical sales, even that last role in Brazil, doing marketing, handling portfolios, sales campaigns, a bit of finance. A little bit of everything, as the source puts it.
Yeah.
They weren't just jobs. They were building this incredibly broad, human-focused skill set. Understanding needs, connecting groups, finding practical solutions, working directly with all sorts of people.
Precisely. And that background, that wealth of human interaction is really the key context for understanding how she got hired at VMware in 2017. It wasn't just her business administration degree.
The sources are pretty clear on that, right? They say it was her experience with people, navigating different cultures, languages, her passion for making a difference, connecting people, learning, creating supportive environments. That was the differentiator.
Yes. The tech stuff she could learn, but those deep human skills, they were forged over years in completely different contexts. But, I mean, stepping into Silicon Valley tech was still a huge leap.
Oh, for sure. She apparently said she had to basically relearn everything. Spent 6 months just digging into VMware products.
Getting up to speed, technically. And then attending her first big VMware Explore conference just 6 months into the job. Sounds like it was quite something.
She described it as very impactful, but also scary.
And she's open about why, which is interesting. Dealing with not having perfect English yet, plus managing her childhood PTSD in that kind of high-stakes environment.
That really highlights the personal resilience needed alongside the professional adjustment.
Absolutely remarkable. So let's talk about those 8 years at VMware then. How did that unique background actually play out in her work there?
Well, she joined in 2017, initially focusing on community tools. But the sources say she quickly realized something important.
Which was?
That the real leverage wasn't just launching new tools, it was understanding the people. What makes them show up? What makes them stay? What makes them feel seen? Back to the human element again.
It always comes back to that for her, it seems. And the V Brown Bag community. That sounds like a really key moment early on.
Definitely. Being welcomed by them, getting help when she felt lost. These 3 guys just stepped up to help her with sessions. It was a big realization for her.
What did she take away from that?
That no machine or automated system could replace genuine human support. That core belief. Only human beings can truly uplift and support one another, and compassion is at the core.
And they had, as she put it, no reason to be helping, but they did anyway.
Right. That experience of being helped purely out of goodwill really cemented her desire to pay it forward, to help others in the community.
You can see how that would fuel her work. And the sources suggest that in the years after, maybe 2019 to 2021, she really grew into the role, became bolder.
Yeah, stopped waiting for permission, started building things with real purpose, rethinking how moderators were rewarded, championing programs maybe others didn't see the value in immediately, playing the long game, as the source says, shaping the community's future based on those human principles.
Then things got shaky, right? 2022, layoffs, restructures.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty. But the sources note that both she and the community adapted. It sounds like that period made her realize she wasn't just managing something. She was actively carrying it forward, stewarding it through the storm.
And then the Broadcom strategic shift in 2024-2025. Another major challenge. The sources don't sugarcoat it. Culture changed, priorities shifted.
But her reaction wasn't to pull back.
Quite the opposite. She didn't step back, she actually got more involved. Even with fewer resources, she felt she had more clarity on what was truly important.
So what did that look like practically?
Focusing on core community health. Things like defining clear badge governance, trying to restore that sense of home in the VMTN forums, those key discussion boards, developing a strategy not just for survival, but for rebirth.
That shows real dedication, especially when things are tough. And she's still deeply involved now.
Very much so. Planning the community's area for VMware Explore, managing the forums, the moderator program, working across different teams, events, rewards, champions, advocacy, and already organizing stuff for Explore 2025.
It really does sound like her loyalty is deeply rooted in the community itself. The sources even quote her saying diplomatically that she feels she works for the community, not for the company.
That says a lot, doesn't it, about where her priorities lie, which ties back perfectly to that passion for people that was ignited way back.
Yeah, it feels like a good moment to maybe zoom in on those core beliefs, the human connection, the compassion that seems to drive everything.
Agreed. We touched on that V brown bag moment, getting help unexpectedly, seeing that human support in action.
Right. And how that wasn't about a transaction, just people helping people. And this seems to really inform her view on AI in communities, which the sources discuss.
Yeah, it's quite nuanced. She acknowledges AI is amazing, it's here to help us, no denial there.
But she has a concern.
Her worry is, if people only get help from AI, they might miss out on learning how to have compassion and embrace other human beings. That reliance solely on AI could break the chain of helping and being helped.
The very chain that builds community.
Exactly. That process of learning how to be a community, how to support each other. It's not anti-AI, it's pro-human connection. Recognizing what only people can provide: empathy, shared understanding, giving back.
That willingness to help each other is what makes it meaningful for her.
Right. And she sees it happening, you know. She talks about watching the old pellars in the VMware community passing knowledge to the young ones. That human-to-human transfer is vital.
So her definition of community, based on everything we've seen in the sources, is much richer than just, say, a Q&A forum.
Oh, absolutely. It's about bonds, empathy, helping, giving back, shared interests, yes, but fundamentally sharing knowledge and support between people.
And she connects this belief directly back to her entire life story: the farm, the NGO work, the moves, the challenges.
Yeah, the sources frame it as every step teaching her the irreplaceable value of human connection.
Those connections, being helped, helping others. She says they have shaped me and continue to drive my passion for building and nurturing communities. It's the constant theme.
Definitely. And looking at her VMware work through that lens, the sources suggest she sees it as more than just a job well done. It's like building a trail.
A trail, meaning
Something that others can follow, build on, challenge, evolve. A lasting impact.
a sense of creating something real and meaningful with this community. You see those values clearly. Community first, human-centered engagement, impact that matters.
And she's apparently not done. Still focused on sustainability, making sure that human approach endures, which explains her deep involvement in planning for Explore 2025 already.
Okay, so if we try to distill this deep dive down, what's the main takeaway about Julia Klaus?
I think it's a really powerful reminder that what makes someone a great community builder often isn't just the formal qualifications. It's often rooted in this deep well of diverse life experiences, resilience built through challenges, empathy, and just a fundamental belief in people connecting with people.
Right. Her unique background, the parts that maybe felt odd or required huge adjustments, actually became the bedrock for her work, for building these really strong human communities in a tech space.
Yeah, her story really shows how our own, unique paths, even the tough bits, the unconventional turns, can be the very things that allow us to connect with others and build something meaningful.
It definitely makes you think, doesn't it, about what really qualifies someone to connect, to build community. So maybe something for you, the listener, to consider. How might your own unique experiences, the things you learned outside of any formal setting, the challenges you overcame, the times you helped or were helped, how might those be shaping how you connect with others, how you build community in your own life, online or off?